Welcome to the fourth season of the Coaching Cast, your working from home club. Here to keep you company, remind you that you're not alone and that there's many of us outside of your current four walls, all trying to survive and thrive in today's business environment. So regardless of where you are working right now or whatever you do as a career, we've got something for you here at the Coaching Cast. I'm Lisa, founder of Grip Corporate Coaching, personal performance coach, leader, and chief eye roller when it comes to all nonsensical corporate mumbo jumbo, which suffocates rather than advocates.
And I'm Susie, sales and business coach at Future You Business Coaching, currently taking on my hardest coaching assignment to date, still parenting that 2-year-old who doesn't take too kindly to being questioned.
In this podcast, we explore all things work-related, matters impacting you at work right now, presenting different topics each episode, which we will discuss with some special guests along the way, sharing ideas, hints and tips for you to take away and try for yourself. We hope you enjoy listening. Today, we were due to speak with Olympian Jack Green about the topic of achieving high performance without the cost of our well-being. But unfortunately, Jack is unwell. Not COVID, I don't believe, but he's poorly. So don't worry, we will be speaking to Jack next week. And so you will have the opportunity to listen to him share his invaluable experience and knowledge in this area. So instead, today, we're celebrating International Women's Day. The theme for this year is breaking the bias. And so today's topic is exploring the growing bias of proximity, triggered by us working remotely during the pandemic and individuals spending more time at home and not in the office with their colleagues. So stay with us and enjoy. So happy International Women's Day, Suze. International Women's Day. That's what it is.
Happy International Women's Day.
International Women's Day. IWD.
So IWD 2022.
IWD. Yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
Gosh.
Yes.
So
exciting day. So we decided to dress in bright colours. So if you're watching us on YouTube, you will see that we decided that, well, I'm wearing literally a bright yellow blazer. Like you couldn't get more bright. It was the only bright coloured thing I had in my winter wardrobe because all my summer clothes are in the loft, which I know is not a great storage solution at the moment. So yeah, we decided to kind of celebrate by being a bit more sparkly this week, didn't we?
A bit brighter. Yeah, I've made it. Yeah. I've done my hair.
Lisa's done her hair.
I've done my hair. That's a big deal. And I've got my big blue poofy dress on, which I'm thrilled about. And as I was explaining to Suze, I'm actually going out for lunch straight after this. So it's timed perfectly because I actually look decent for the podcast because I'm making an effort for the lunch I'm going out on. So yes, so happy International Women's Day. So how have you been this past week?
Yeah, so quite a lot's happened this last week actually.
A lot has happened.
So obviously it's probably prudent to start with just acknowledging that some absolutely awful things have happened in the world in the last week or so with the invasion of Ukraine. I know we've talked about it, haven't we, the last kind of couple of days around whether we should carry on posting on our Instagram because it just felt all a little bit insignificant given the suffering and the kind of terribleness that's been happening. And yeah, I can't believe it, to be honest with you. And I think especially as a mum, just seeing, I watched one video in particular of a family, a dad's putting his child on the bus and him staying in Ukraine to kind of become a soldier. And it really got me. It really, really hit a chord with me. So I suppose we wanted to do the right thing and just kind of acknowledge that there are people right now not that far away who are going through quite a terrible time at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think we created this podcast to always be a support to people. And so it felt the right thing to do to continue to do exactly that, provide support via our Instagram pages, our social pages, and also through this podcast itself. So we will be continuing with our recordings, with the content that we have planned, and with the posts on our Instagram page, which we want to continue to ensure help everybody, regardless of where you are, what's going on for you right now and your circumstances. But if you are interested in supporting any of the efforts, there's a lot of charities helping the Ukraine at the moment, and we did share a couple of those, Red Cross and Choose Love, on our Instagram page, and there are many more. I've seen so many different efforts to support the Ukraine. So our love and support and thoughts are all with the Ukraine at the moment. So as well as that, obviously, as we were sort of acknowledging, life carries on for everybody in some form. Wherever we are, we're all experiencing different things. So what else has been happening in your world the last week, Suze?
So the last week was half term. So I had a shorter working week because I decided to take a couple of days off towards the back end of last week to spend some time with my little boy. And on one of those days, I took him to Delamere Forest, which is a big forest near Chester, so not too far from where I live. And the only way I can describe it is I got mugged off by a gruffalo. Like, that's literally what happened.
I can't imagine there are many people that tend to say that as a phrase. Mugged off by a gruffalo.
But absolutely mugged off by a gruffalo.
Tell us more, Suze, what happened?
So there's a gruffalo trail at Delamere. So I had been telling my little boy the whole morning, we're going to find the gruffalo. We're going on this walk through the forest, and there'll be like lots of clues. And then at the end, we'll hopefully find the gruffalo. So we started this tour, like this walk, and there was all the gruffalo characters, like the fox and the mouse. Like, if you have a child, you'll probably be aware of the different characters in the gruffalo story that lead up and etc. through this forest. We get to the end where I knew historically the gruffalo was, and there was no gruffalo. There was a sign, and it said, the gruffalo has gone on holiday for some maintenance. And there was an owl there. So then I was like, oh God. So I was like, Gruffalo, where's the Gruffalo? And I'm like, I've literally promised him the whole of this walk to get this toddler to this point, and there's no flipping Gruffalo at the end. So I was like, why did you not have a sign at the start of the route? Because that means I could have changed what I was promising. Anyway, so I then had to kind of swiftly act on my feet and change. I was like, oh, you found a special owl. Wow, this is a special owl. And then he was kind of looked at me a bit like, special owl? And I was like, yeah, it's a special owl, look. So yeah, I got mugged off by Gruffalo. So that was a bit irritating. And I had to really like swiftly act on my feet and pull all my skills together to save this situation, which I did manage to do without a meltdown, which was I was very thankful of.
So creative, Sue, so creative. Wow. Thinking on your feet.
Thinking on my feet right there. So yeah, that happened. Also, some funny things have happened. So I got a really weird LinkedIn message the other day. I'm going to find it. Bear with me. I'm going to read it to you. It was regarding somebody who wanted to connect with me on my profile. Needless to say, I have not connected with this person.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I'm intrigued.
Hey, Susie, do you remember my brother, Nate, messaging you? No, is my response to that. I know he probably said something cheesy about you both having good energy, but maybe he was right. You keep coming across on our feed, so let's connect. What is that? I mean,
so is he making reference to me as well?
I maybe, like, I don't know. It's like his sister messaging me.
Oh, right.
Like it's a female. I'm not going to read a name, obviously. But it's like, hey, Susie, do you remember my brother Nate messaging you? I know he probably said something cheesy about you both having good energy, but maybe he was right? ? You keep coming across our feed, so let's connect. Like, maybe it is referring to you as well. Anyway, weird. Who sends messages like that? I was like, decline. No.
We could have just missed our big break. Did you not look into who he is? Is he not like some major podcasting influencer or something?
No.
We just missed our big opportunity.
I don't even know who he is. I've not even had a message from Nate. Like, that's weird. Anyway,
weird and wonderful world of social media, though. I get some bizarre messages. Honestly,
some of the stuff. Anyway, so that was a bit weird. I was like, no, decline. And then what else has happened? Quite a lot else has happened. Oh, I've been very cultured this weekend because I went to see the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra in Manchester on Saturday night. Which
check you out.
Yeah, is not something I have done before or regularly do, but I felt very cultured whilst I was there. Like I was doing something worthwhile and grown up. Like this is, proper.
You've hit middle age.
Good Saturday night out. Yeah, for sure. It was amazing. Oh my goodness me. It was absolutely stunning. Really like moving, especially with obviously everything that's happened in the last week in the news. It was quite powerful. It was the Northern Philharmonic Orchestra, because apparently there's one in the north and one in the south.
Which I did not know.
No, I didn't know that. Highly recommend it. It was like 2 hours. You get an interval in between. You can take wine in. I mean, hello. I was like, this is literally brilliant. I really enjoyed it. It was so good. I felt so grown up and proper doing it. I'd highly recommend. Yeah.
Good for you. Well, I think, cheeky fact for you all, CBeebies and Suze, I used to play the flute. So
did you?
I am a fan of classical music.
You kept this under your
I played the flute from primary school right through secondary school. I only gave it up around the age of 16, and regularly played in orchestras, both the Kent Youth Orchestra I played in, and was it the Kent Youth Orchestra? I think it was. I might have made that up. I've definitely played in some sort of like county orchestra of some kind anyway, and I played in all my school orchestras. I absolutely loved playing my flute in an orchestra. I did some of my grades. So yeah. But I've given up. I gave it up and I've kind of lost the skill. So it's something I need to like revisit and try and refresh, because I've forgotten how to read music, and being able to read music does feel like a bit of an art. It's like learning a language. But yeah, I've heard all the jokes. There was that one time at band camp. Yeah. Heard those. That is not how I play my flute, is all I'm saying. Definitely not. And actually, that's a nice segue into my next topic, which is, it is International Women's Day, and we're talking about women and females in particular. We're celebrating ourselves today. And in respect to what I've been doing this past week, I have been having my lady bits reviewed, just to make sure everything's all right and working down there. And this sort of process started about 8 months ago. And I have since learned that I have endometriosis. So for anyone out there who doesn't understand what endometriosis is, it is where the lining of the womb, the cells start growing outside of the womb and attaching themselves pretty much to anything. I've learned. And so, yes, it can be a very painful experience. I'm very fortunate. I am asymptomatic. I barely notice that I have endometriosis, but I know that's not the same for many women, yourself included, Suze, because you also suffer with endometriosis.
I do, yeah.
So I am having an operation to have it removed at the end of April. So yeah, I'll keep you posted. That'll be something I'll probably talk about in the next season of the Coaching Cast in May, if I go through it successfully. Who knows? I'm not a big fan of surgery. I'm not like you, Suze. I don't have a loyalty card for the hospital, so I'm not really massively looking forward to this. The last time I had a major operation was when I fractured my ankle, 8 years ago, 9 years ago now. And yeah, that's a whole nother story for another time. That actually is a really good workworkplace shame. I'll come back to that on another occasion.
Oh, okay. Right. I'm gonna hold you to that for a future episode.
That was the last time I had surgery. But yeah, so that's pretty much what my last week's been consisting of, is getting that looked into and organised and sorted out. So yeah, busy times. So in terms of today, then, we are celebrating International Women's Day, and we are going to explore the theme of the International Women's Day, which is break the bias. So shall we crack on with our discussion around proximity bias?
Let's go.
That seamless link between endometriosis and proximity bias right there. Yeah, not quite. Bear with us, listeners. last year, the BBC published an article entitled Hybrid Work, How Proximity Bias Can Lead to Favouritism, which shared research demonstrating that we favour those who we see more often, highlighting a potential growing issue with how individuals are viewed and recognised, potentially unfairly, as many of us continue to stay away from the office and work from home, despite the improved return back to the workplace. This has also been noted by Racketeur magazine, the fantastic business magazine provided by the Times, highly recommend it, who have highlighted it as being potentially a larger issue impacting women who are preferring to work from home more often based on childcare arrangements. Ali Shalfrushan, a UK-based occupational psychologist at workplace solutions provider PSI Services, explains in the BBC article that proximity bias existed in the workplace long before the pandemic. We all can reflect on occasions where the people we sit near are the people we know the best and feel the most kinship to. The article continues to explain that this bond can create a halo effect, where we build an inflated view of those nearby while overlooking more qualified individuals further away. This effect can also cause leadership to excuse the poor performance of those in their proximity, while not properly valuing the skills and expertise of those with whom they have less contact. So how do we address and mitigate the issues caused by proximity bias as we progress to a hybrid way of working, basing ourselves at home and in the office? Suze, what's your experience of this bias, this proximity bias?
Yeah, so I've not actually heard of this term before in terms of proximity bias, but as we started discussing it as part of today's episode, and reading a bit more about it, it totally makes sense and is definitely something I have experienced for sure. I think I have experienced it actually long before the pandemic as well. So before the pandemic and before I had my little boy, I was living in Cheshire, where I live now, and I was commuting every week to London to work for an organisation. And that meant that I was doing a combination of hybrid working. So I was for 6-7 years, maybe 6 years. I can't get my. Anyone else lost a year because of COVID? Honestly, I struggle with this all the time.
Yeah, lost 2.
Yeah, like 6 years. I was hybrid working, so I was working a couple of days from home, working down in the office in London. I was kind of here, there, and everywhere. So I definitely have experienced this. Obviously, post-pandemic, I set up my business, so I'm now fully working from home. So experienced it less because of my personal circumstances post the pandemic. But I can definitely relate in terms of my experiences pre. And it's not something I necessarily had kind of connected the dots on before, but it does happen. And you can kind of see why it happens, because there's that definitely, in my experience, that bias towards workers who are physically present in the office, or there was. It may be different now, but you don't necessarily want people who are always in that office environment, physically there, to be having additional benefits or additional projects or additional opportunities because of their proximity to their colleagues, to leadership. That in a sense has, is biased. That's unfair. So my experience of it is actually when I reflected back, is kind of in a couple of ways. So one was that I used to definitely get left out of meetings because I wasn't physically there. And I don't know whether that was intentional. I'm not saying it was, but it definitely happened. I can remember one situation where there was a meeting in London, in central London, on one of the days that I would have kind of traditionally worked from home. And it involved all of my leadership peers, my line manager and my line manager's manager at the time, who was pretty senior in the business. And I didn't get invited to that. And nobody had a conversation with me about that meeting because they just assumed I wouldn't be able to be there because I lived quite a long way away. And that is an example of where that proximity bias absolutely came into play. I kind of got forgotten, I think, because I wasn't in that immediate geographical location. Actually, the reality was I could have got there quite easily because there's a really good train line that runs from Manchester to London Euston. Yeah. Takes like an hour and 50. Yeah. So actually, yeah, I probably could have got there. But aside from that, I think that is an example where it definitely kind of came into play. And then the other experience I've had of it is probably, and again, I'm not saying this was purposeful, but we did kind of, again, this was pre-COVID time, so things may be a lot better now. But in terms of technology and dialing into meetings, dialing into calls, just wasn't quite set up to be fully functioning and being able to be fully present if you weren't in the office. So it'd get silenced quite a lot on calls, or people would cut over, or they'd forget you're there and they'll all go off for lunch, and then you're like, hello, hi, is anybody there? Because they've just forgotten that you're on the other end of there because you're not physically there to kind of remind them. So yeah, I have, to answer your question, I have experienced it. It definitely wasn't intentional in my experience. I'm pretty, confident of that. And it's something I'd not really necessarily connected the dots on before, that it was kind of happening, and that it was kind of a term in itself.
I think with all bias, that they don't necessarily have to have an intentional element to them. They are the natural way in which we behave. Yeah, and they are a construct of, all of our experiences, and in many ways, the environments we've lived in, worked in, been brought up in, where we've lived in the world, how we've lived, are the benefits and opportunities we've had. All bias tends to be, I think, in many ways, a level of completely subconscious. I think it's definitely in the way that you describe. It's that because people didn't think about it, in other words, because they hadn't moved it into their conscious and made a real concerted effort to include you, it was easy to forget you because you weren't seen. And I think that's the challenge here, is actually how we have to be aware of the fact that it's not just about people being in our sort of periphery, like in our sort of space of vision, that you have to remember that there are people who aren't there, and it's about remembering them. I mean, I know with my personal experience, I don't personally think I've ever, not that I can think of, I can't remember a time when I have experienced proximity bias towards me. I think it's been actually more the fact that I'm aware of how I may have been biased towards others based on their proximity, and how I've had to be very conscious at all times of including everyone. When I've had a scenario where I've had team members who were all over the country. So I know in a previous job, I had a field team where 3 of them were based where the office was based, and I saw them all the time because they were always in the office. And then I had individuals, because it was based on a team merger, and where a number of people had become part of my team who had originally been based at an office a couple of hours away. So just by the pure nature of that merger, and the fact that initially we didn't state that they had to be based out of the new office where I already was, they were scattered. And so I had always had an element of this, like some of the team being right with me in the office daily, and the rest of the team being located elsewhere. And one of those individuals as well lived hours away, like right down in the southwest. I mean, he was so far away. And I was always really mindful of the fact that I was spending a lot of time with those 3 individuals in the office, and that I was going to have to make a concerted effort to make the same time, like opportunities, and spend time with the rest of the team. And it was really challenging. I think it's always so easy to look to those who were right there, when things are happening and you're working in a fast-paced environment, which I always have done, it's always been very customer focused, always delivering, you've got a lot of deadlines to meet and things are changing all the time. It's only natural that when things are going on, especially when challenges and problems occur, you look to those who you can immediately engage in to get it sorted. And it's only natural then that those people who are the closest to you, who you can see, are who you delegate that to, and you miss out the rest. Now, the challenge I had in that is it was twofold. The individuals who were further away got frustrated by that because they felt they didn't feel included, they didn't feel trusted to be delegated to. They were missing out on opportunities to challenge themselves and learn and take on more accountability. And actually, those who were closest to me got fed up with always being the ones to take on those extra workloads, the extra pressure. And, it kind of started to create a bit of a rift that I had to really carefully manage, navigate and resolve, because the individuals closest to me felt very much as though they were the ones carrying the team's success and other people were getting away with not doing as much. So I think you have to be mindful of proximity bias in that way. It's not always about how you may be biased towards individuals to give them more opportunity and promote their success. You can actually do it in the detrimental sense and actually create quite a lot of conflict. Totally, it won't necessarily be intentional, but it's about thinking, even when you've got people far away from each other, it comes back to that basics, I think, of how do you grow and build a team? How do you ensure that you're engaging everybody consistently and regularly, that you are recognizing everyone as individuals, and that you are being fair in how you delegate? Because in that way, you are really then ensuring that the team is balanced and working together, and it's fair. I think that's the big word here in all of this, isn't it? It's fairness. It's like, how can you be as fair as possible? So what are your thoughts in respect of the Racketeer findings from the Times, that this bias tends to impact women a lot more heavily than men?
So I can see how this can potentially be the case on paper, because I think this has been exasperated through the pandemic, that women are now more likely to take the burden of care responsibilities for children, for elderly parents, for example, or family members. And so flexible working is then, and I think there's research around it, around females are more likely to be remote workers now. So I can see how this absolutely can affect women. I haven't necessarily experienced or seen for myself this in reality affecting more women than men, but I can definitely understand how that could be the case for sure. I think it's an interesting one, because also in the marketplace around kind of employment at the moment, there is a real challenge for talent at the moment in terms of getting people to want to move jobs, because a lot of organizations now have changed their approach in terms of flexible working. And so actually people are like, this is kind of giving me what I've wanted. I'm comfortable here. I don't want to rock the boat too much. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. So people aren't as willing as perhaps they once were to move jobs. So that then kind of creates, I think, a bit of a bottleneck and a bit of an impact around attracting talent into organizations and thinking about that effect on women, probably more so because of that shift in dynamic since the pandemic in terms of care responsibilities or parenting responsibilities. So I can see definitely the impact it would have. What about you? Have you kind of seen this in motion?
I think, to be honest, this was an issue for women before. I don't think it's, in my opinion, and it is an opinion only, it's not experience based, because I've not ever been in a situation as a woman where I have really pushed to have a flexible working arrangement or changed my working arrangement and therefore, been in the office less. But I always felt that this was a challenge for women before, in terms of having experience of females who had gone on maternity leave to have a child, had previously worked in the office because it was pre-pandemic days, but even if it had been a bit of a hybrid arrangement then, because I've worked with field teams where we predominantly worked from home anyway, but where they were available, let's say 5 days a week, and did their job across 5 days a week, and then have wanted to create a flexible working arrangement on their return and go down to potentially 4 days or even 3. And as soon as those days are no longer there for them to be in the office and present and visible, I already experienced the challenge for them of remaining connected, engaged, seen, recognised, because of the challenge then of just not being there, like physically or remotely. And I think it's such a difficult subject, in so much as it's not, I don't think it's a new thing. And I think it was always around for me, for anyone who, for example, I managed who came off maternity leave. It was always about ensuring that actually they could create a working environment for themselves that now suited their new circumstances, and that still fulfilled the requirements of the role and for the business. And that was always a balancing act. I mean, in some cases it meant the individual changed roles because actually it was about finding now a role that better suited their circumstances. But wherever possible, it was trying to make what actually they had been doing and they had enjoyed doing and done well at now work for them in a different way, and being respectful of their change in circumstances and being respectful of their new responsibilities. It's not as though, I think there's that, it's always being careful that you don't get that completely incorrect perception that a woman is doing less, which is totally bollocks. I mean, it's not that they're doing less, they now have 2 jobs. So
I was like, you've got 2 jobs now.
Yeah, you've got 2 jobs, 3 if you have to look after your husband as well. I mean, Jesus, or partner. So yeah, it's about always keeping that in mind and going, how can this job now work for this person, and how do we manage our expectations now that they're doing 4 days, not 5, and still very much. And it's a conscious thing. It comes back to what we've just spoken about. Yeah. Consciously ensuring that they still feel engaged, included, supported, not forgotten about just because they're no longer there that 1 day or 2 days even. But that is a conscious effort. I think that is where people go wrong. And I think that's where businesses go wrong, is when they don't flex and adapt, when they don't acknowledge, and they don't themselves make allowances and start themselves changing their behaviours. You can't just expect to carry on as you always did before when people's lives are completely changing. And I definitely have been a witness to that, I think, where females have come off maternity leave and are treated exactly the same as they were before, and the expectations on them are exactly as the same as they were before, and nothing is adjusted for that. And that's totally ridiculous. That's when I've seen females like really fully burn out and often sadly leave the job, where those kind of things haven't been appreciated.
I think that piece you mentioned about conscious effort is also one we should explore as well, if you also have a team who are fully remote. Because I also know that some of our listeners, our CVBs, don't necessarily have a hybrid dynamic going on for them. So it could be that you actually fully work from home, like Lisa and I do, and so does your team. You don't have a situation where some people are dipping into a physical office environment and then working from home as well. So if that is the case, I think this theory absolutely still applies. Yeah. And it's about your conscious effort around understanding it and managing it. So for example, let's think about location. Even when we're working remotely, we still have different locations when all of us are doing that. So Lisa and I currently have very different locations. I'm in sunny Cheshire today. Lisa is currently in South Africa in 30 degrees. What is the temperature
It's not
today?
Actually 30 degrees today. It's a cooler day today. I think it's only like 23.
It's only 23.
It's only 23. It will probably get hotter as the day goes on. But, I'm just saying.
Okay.
Just saying.
But,
it's supposed to be 30 or 40 degrees at the weekend, everyone, as far as I'm aware. I'll be in the shade. Where I always am.
I'll be in the rain. Anyway, but there is a time difference, isn't there, between South Africa and the UK?
2 hours. I'm 2 hours ahead. Yeah.
So Lisa is 2 hours ahead. So, for example, that means that I need to have an awareness around what time we schedule our catch-ups, so that doesn't impact indirectly on Lisa in a negative way, and vice versa. And there's a kind of piece there as well about what projects or assignments or tasks we kind of assign to each other, because we're in different locations, but we're both still working remotely. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. And I can think of how this came into play when I was managing a team. I definitely kind of spent more time online with people who were in a kind of more close geographical location to me than people who weren't. But again, I think about that, and that wasn't a conscious effort to. That just kind of, again, was because this proximity bias was at play. And I didn't have an awareness of it. So I think just thinking about, okay, have I spent more time with somebody because although we're still talking on Zoom or on Teams, but because they will live closer to me than somebody who doesn't live closer to me, is still absolutely applicable in this situation as well.
Yeah, totally. And I've got a similar experience in so much that I used to manage a national field sales team, and I was based in the middle of the country, and I had a member of my team who was in Warwick, who was only sort of 45 minutes away. I had another member of the team an hour and a half away in London. I spent more time with them, both talking to them, but actually physically we would meet up in locations around the country that suited us between where we lived, and a lot more than the individuals that I had in Liverpool and Scotland. I know the individual in Scotland was definitely more negatively impacted by this because they were that bit further away. It was difficult and a challenge for them as well. So in those situations, it's about, okay, if you can't physically be together, how can you still ensure you're engaging with them? And I know that I was consciously having to put in more effort actually to engage with that person, to support that person, to make sure that actually I wasn't being biased to the fact that I had individuals in the team who were closer. But it comes back to that consciousness and then the effort you're going to have to put in. And I think you have to accept that responsibility, and that's the case with these situations, is that you do need to put more effort in, and you need to get more creative to ensure that actually you are engaging with everyone consistently and being fair. And I'm going to keep using that word fair, but that's the only way to address, I think, this bias. But yeah, the first step very much is being aware of it. So that moves us nicely to really looking at, okay, so what are our top tips for really managing and I would say navigating this form of bias? I'm always really conscious of not saying like completely resolving it or fixing it, because I don't think that's possible. I think the best outcome here is about like, how do we better manage it, navigate it, and try to avoid it wherever we can. So what are your tips in this regard? I think from the perspective of both for an individual who may be feeling like they're experiencing proximity bias against them, and also managers in tackling it.
Yeah, so I think first of all, like reflect on, and this is applicable to both managers and individuals, reflect on who have you had, I'm going to call it an ad hoc conversation with in the last week or couple of weeks. And actually note that down. And is there a theme? Is there a trend there? Because actually, if 80% of those people are people that you've spoken to face-to-face physically, and 20% are people who you've spoken to remotely online, Zoom, Teams, on the phone, etc., then there's a bit of work there to kind of think about, okay, how do I neutralize this? How do I bridge that gap and make that a bit fair and give that opportunity to everyone? So I think, again, that increases your awareness, that increases your conscious effort then about how you take that forward in your management of yourself, but also in the management of others as well. So I think that reflection and that tally is quite a good top tip. And building off that, I think you can do the same with that with projects as well. Because one of the things I think perhaps we haven't talked about, which is still critical in this, is that I remember when I was working remotely, there would be kind of ad hoc conversations at the desks, at the bank of desks, saying kind of, I'm working on this project. What are your thoughts? I'm struggling with this. And you don't get that if you're not physically there in that office environment, because there's more effort, jumping on a Zoom, creating it. By the time you've kind of done that, potentially the moment has gone. So we'll also have a think about, okay, I'm going to tally also, who's getting projects, who's getting some of those assignments, who's getting those opportunities to input into stuff, and again, look for trends and think about, okay, are there some things here that I can do a bit differently to create a more fairness and better balance of things for those that I lead and manage.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that delegation piece. I think from my experience, the story I shared, that's definitely where I went wrong. And it was my biggest learning, which was actually, this isn't just about ensuring that people are celebrated and recognised and have the opportunity to learn and grow themselves. It's actually also about being really mindful of not overloading one person over another. And how actually you may be detrimental to them and their well-being and enjoyment in the job. You don't want to overwhelm people. So I definitely agree with that delegation piece. And I like the idea of the assessment, like checking in on yourself. I think it's what always worked really well for me and kept me on top of this and monitoring it, was making sure that actually every week I had scheduled catch-ups, both with the team as a collective, but then also individuals, and was always speaking to them and making time for them every week, so that exactly the same for everybody. No one person was left out of that. So I was being consistent for every single person, and then always making sure actually that every month I physically saw people and every single person in the team. So again, it was, let's schedule weekly catch-ups on the phone. It can be Zoom now, because that's a lot more personable than what I was working with a couple of years ago, when video conferencing wasn't as prolific as it is now. But then also ensuring that actually every month I also saw every single person in my team as well. And that doesn't have to be in the office. That's the fact of it. Now we're all working so flexibly. It's not about whether you work at home or whether you work in the office. You can actually work from anywhere. So geographically you can make it work for both of you in terms of where is it more suitable to meet up. So that's definitely something that I think worked really well for me. And again, it just it held you to account to be the lead on it and to role model that. I think if you're an individual experiencing proximity bias, the first step has got to be addressing it. And I think talking about it with your manager in terms of how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and really getting their support to look at how it can be resolved. I think also, I know for me, when I was fully remote working, I did make the conscious effort of going into the office once a week. And that was to help me build relationships. And because I do thrive off spending time with others. So it was for my own gain on many levels. It wasn't just to be seen. It was also because I got a lot of value from seeing people, speaking to people, having those candid conversations at the desk, Susie, as you describe, and learning. So I did consciously do that. And I do think there is an element here of, look, as an individual, we're accountable for our own success and we're accountable for how we feel at work. It's not just about those around us who have positions of authority. So I think you do need to sometimes look at your own circumstance and going, actually, how can I be more visible?
Yeah. And I think what helps with that, as another top tip, is just having that, if you can, just be really clear on expectations around working from home and in the office, so that creates that level playing field. And again, that fairness. So if you're managing someone or a team, you're clear on what those expectations are, whether that's 2 days a week, but you've got you can choose what 2 days work best for you, but everybody's 2 days a week and then the rest can be at home, or it's totally at home, or it's totally in the office. But set that, because then everybody's in on the same kind of expectations, and that makes it easier then to kind of manage. And if you're an individual and you don't have those expectations, then ask for them. Ask, what is the expectation of me, just in terms of this hybrid way of working. That should really help. I think as well, just my final point is, just please, going back to my story before, just make sure that meetings include everyone, regardless of location. Do not assume because somebody lives 2 2 hours away, like in my example, that they can't get there or they don't want to be there. Assumption is not great in any context, but in this one, it's particularly not great. So just, try and include everybody regardless of location. And then it's kind of up to them to work through whether that works for them or not.
Thanks, Sue. So we'll summarise our top tips, as always, as we usually do, from that particular discussion, and we will share them towards the end of this show.
It's now time for Bullshit Bingo, where we call out phrases which get commonly used in the workplace, which, quite frankly, make us cringe. Today's Bullshit Bingo is get this boat out of the dock. Lisa, have you heard of this one?
I don't think anyone I've ever worked with has ever used this. This is so American again, though, isn't it? Surely. I think I've heard this on a TV programme, but I think it was tongue in cheek. Like it may have featured Steve Carell or something. It feels very much like the American Office, I think. No, I've never heard it. Have you ever heard anyone use it?
No, I don't think I've heard anyone use this one. Do we know where this one came from?
No, I can't remember. It could have been a LinkedIn.
I think someone might have come from LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And we do have a lot of international CBBS who listen to us, who are part of our network on LinkedIn. And it might have been an individual. That's why I'm thinking it could be someone from the US. But it is so funny. Like I couldn't take this seriously. Someone said to me, let's get this boat out the dock. I'd be like, I probably would laugh out loud.
I would.
I can imagine someone would only say it like tongue in cheek, like being sarcastic.
I'd be like, pardon?
Get this boat out of the dock.
Sorry? What? Have we been like teleported to some kind of nice harbour situation? But then again, my mind would go into a completely different place. I'd be totally distracted and be like thinking about nice beaches.
Well, you'd be on holiday.
Docks.
You haven't been on holiday. You haven't been abroad for years, have you? So you're like, yeah.
Exactly. It's been a couple of years since I've been away. So I would be absolutely on a super yacht in Below Deck, like for sure.
I forgot about your obsession with Below Deck. Yeah, good point. Don't they say this all the time on Below Deck? Let's get this boat out of the dock.
They absolutely do.
But that's literal, because they literally do need to get the boat out of the dock. Yeah.
And Captain Lee never struggles doing that. Believe me. He is a pro.
I'll take your word for it. I've never seen it. I still haven't seen it. I know you're obsessed with it. So is my mate Siobhan. She loves Below Deck. So I'll take your word for it then.
We'll go from Bullshit Bingo to Captain Lee and Below Deck. All the chat on this podcast today.
All the relevant topics.
But if you have any bullshit bingos that you hear at work, then please let us know. You can send them through to us on email at hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk. You can DM us on Instagram at thecoachingcast, or you can even let us know through our website, which is thecoachingcast.co.uk. So there's 3 ways to get in touch, and we absolutely love receiving them. So please send them through.
We're coming to the end of today's episode, where we have been discussing proximity bias in recognition and celebration of International Women's Day and their theme, Break the Bias. So our tips and recommendations from today are as follows. So the overall themes that we've drawn out from our discussion today are in green. So they are in the context of bias of any kind, but in this particular topic of proximity, it's about remembering to be fair. So fairness is really important. It's about inclusion. So really ensuring you include everyone, that you don't make assumptions just because they're not present in the office about whether or not they can come in on that day because of the day of the week it is, or travel. So as Susie says, don't forget her. Don't leave her out, please, people. Just because she's not there doesn't mean she doesn't want to be there.
I have FOMO.
Yeah, I always have FOMO. And then the last one, and it's a common one. Come on, guys. It's always about awareness. The more aware of these things we are, the more we can move them into our consciousness and ensure that we're trying to address and manage them. So the first tip is assess who in your team you've spoken with and their workload or opportunities right now. So really do a bit of an assessment, be honest with yourself, and really understand actually who in your team at the moment are you feeling the less connected with, and who are you giving your least attention to, and who potentially are missing out on opportunities to help them with their personal growth and development. The second one is schedule weekly catch-ups with each individual to ensure that you're always speaking with them and giving them your time, and that they are present in your mind every week on a regular basis. And also make time to have monthly face-to-face catch-ups. And like I said, just because we're talking about remote working, but being based at home, and we're talking about being in the office, actually you can work from anywhere. So really think about where is suitable for you two to meet up and see one another, especially with the challenges with geography and travel. And then the third one is seek and give expectations about work location. So if you are an individual who's unsure about the working arrangements and what's expected of you, go ask for it and get that understanding. And equally, if you're a leader and a manager, make sure you're giving people those expectations of what you're looking for. So you're being honest and open all the time. We've also this week got some self-coaching questions for you to try out on yourself to help you explore this topic of proximity bias a bit further. So the first self-coaching question is, number one, how do you value and recognise performance for yourself and for those you manage? So really think about, actually, how do you value individuals? What sort of system processes are you using? What is it based on, evidence-wise? Number two is, what methods or processes do you use, and how fair do you believe that they are? And again, be honest with yourself. If you really can see areas where potentially some of that bias is coming in, think about what you can do differently. So that third part then builds on that. So what 3 things will you do differently to improve fairness and to prevent proximity bias? Don't worry if you can't remember all of these. All of our tips and recommendations will be on our Instagram page at the Coaching Cast this week. And we're also looking to place our top tips each week on our website as well, thecoachingcast.co.uk, to hopefully help you find them a bit easier.
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode, have some new ideas to take away and try for yourselves. If you have any questions, thoughts, feedback, or bullshit bingos, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us in 3 ways: by email, hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk, on Instagram @thecoachingcast, or on our brand new website, thecoachingcast.co.uk, as Lisa just mentioned.
Your support means everything. Therefore, if you like what you've heard today and would like to help us to grow this podcast, please do us a favour and follow us on Instagram, leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app, and subscribe to future episodes wherever you listen. Don't forget, you can also watch each of these episodes on our YouTube channel by searching for The Coaching Cast, where you can also subscribe to be notified of new episodes as they're released.
And we've made an effort today, so you might want to watch on YouTube.
Yeah, I look particularly good for a change. I nearly choked then, Susie, because of that. I was like, whoa, got excited. So yeah, in next week's episode, we're looking forward to welcoming Olympian Jack Green to our rescheduled episode discussing how to achieve high personal performance without the cost of your well-being.
We both love music and use it to motivate and energize us. So we like to finish each episode with our personal song recommendation, giving you positivity and energy as you launch into your next meeting. It's my choice this week, and to recognise International Women's Day, I have chosen British singer-songwriter and absolute amazing babe, Becky Hill, and her song, Remember. It's an absolute tune, so go and take a listen.
I love her. Did you watch her Brits Award?
Yes.
Oh, bless her.
Yes.
She got totally rinsed on TikTok. I think everyone was like using the dialogue. It was brilliant. It was really funny, but I absolutely love her. She's a great example of someone who has consistently showed up and worked really, really hard for many years to reach her success. And that success may not ever happen overnight, but that doesn't mean you should give up, not if you believe in what you're doing. So yeah, great recommendation, especially to celebrate today of all days. So thanks to all of you for listening. Thank you, CBB, so much for being here. Have a great week. And remember, you've got this.